The wisest person I ever met in my life was a man who never finished the third grade. Sounds strange to call a dropout wise, but he truly was. A third-grade dropout, and yet the greatest teacher I ever knew. He was a simple cook who worked hard every day. He never let the fact that he left school define what he could become. He always said that real education does not stop when you leave the classroom. It begins when you decide to learn from life. He taught himself how to read. He taught himself how to write. He stood tall during difficult times when the world around him was filled with unfairness and division. He decided that he would live, not as a black man, not as a white man, not as any label. Others gave, but simply as a man. He challenged himself every single day to be the best version of who he could be. He believed that discipline and integrity were stronger than any title or degree. I went on to earn 4 college degrees. My brother became a judge, but still, neither of us became wiser than the man who cooked for a living and dropped out in 3rd grade. That man was our father. He was the kind of man who would quote great thinkers like Michelangelo saying, "Son, I will never be upset if you aim high and miss, but I will be disappointed if you aim low and succeed." He wanted us to live with high standards, to never settle for less than our full potential. My mother was just as wise in her own quiet way. She used to remind us of what Henry Ford once said, "If you think you can or if you think you cannot, you are right together." They raised us with simple lessons, lessons that built the foundation of our lives. My father would say, "Son, it is better to be an hour early than a minute late." He lived by that rule every day. For almost 30 years, my mother said he left the house before sunrise at 3:45 in the morning. One day she asked him why he did that. He said, "Maybe one of my boys will catch me in the act of excellence." He wanted his actions to speak louder than his words, believed in the power of habit. He used to remind me that Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." So excellence should never be an act. It should become a habit. My father taught me that, no matter how tough life gets, always remember to stay kind. He said, "Son, never embarrass your mother, because if mother is not happy, nobody in the house is." Then he would smile and add, "If your father is not happy, well, nobody cares." That was his humor. But inside those jokes were real wisdom. He taught through laughter and love. And every lesson he shared was wrapped in humility. He used to tell me this: "Make sure your servant's towel is bigger than your ego." He meant that true greatness comes from serving others, not from chasing attention. Ego, he said, is the painkiller that hides the foolishness within us, and pride is the heavy burden that only foolish people carry. My father always said that real success has nothing to do with titles or fame. It has everything to do with the kind of impact you leave behind. He used to tell me stories about John Wooden. The man coached basketball at UCLA and won many championships. Yet even with all that success, he would still be seen sweeping his own gym floor during the week. That was the kind of humility my father respected. He would look at me and say, "Son, if you want to make a real impact in this world, find your broom. Find something you can do every single day that reminds you of who you are. Do it with pride and do it with purpose." He believed that your character should shine through your actions. He would say, "Son, when you are given a job, do it right." Every single time all my life I was told how average I could be, that I would never reach far beyond what was expected of me. But I made up my mind not to let those voices define me. Instead, I told myself every morning to aim higher than before, to reach for the stars, to give everything I had. He taught me that good enough is never good enough if it can be better, and better is never good enough if it can be the best. Then he would add, "When life knocks you down, you can choose to stay there, or you can build from the ground up." He said rock bottom is not the end. It can be the strongest foundation on which to rebuild your life. I learned that the hard way, because sometimes life will test you in ways you never imagined. And when it does, the lessons you were taught will become your lifeline. He would say, "Do not fear failure. Fear standing still, because failure is often the road that leads you to wisdom." He was not worried about whether I would be successful. He was worried about whether I would have the courage to fail and grow stronger. In the 1970s, I met someone who would forever change my life. the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Her name was Trina. She had a smile that could light up an entire room. I met her at a dance back. In those days, big guys like me were not exactly who the ladies wanted. They wanted the quarterbacks and the running backs. But that night was different. We danced, and I asked for her number. And for the first time in college, a woman gave me her real number. The next day, we went out for ice cream. My friends could not believe it. They still talk about it even now. One date turned into 2, then 3, then 4. And soon we were inseparable. When I took her home to meet my parents, my father pulled me aside and whispered, "Son, are you sure she is not crazy?" That was his humor again. But deep down he loved her. We dated for years. And even though I was still figuring life out, she stayed with me. Finally, I decided to ask her to marry me. I planned it the best I could. It was California in the 70s, so it had to be outdoors, with candles, some chocolate and a small bottle of wine I could afford. When I asked her, she said yes. That one word changed everything. We got married and built a beautiful life. Together we had children, we shared laughter and dreams. But one day everything changed. One day Trina found a small lump in her breast. At first we thought it was nothing, but soon we learned the truth. It was cancer. Our world shifted in an instant. The laughter turned to long nights filled with fear and prayers. We fought it together. She fought harder than anyone I had ever known. 6 years after her diagnosis, I found myself walking with my 2 little boys toward her casket. That day felt endless. For 2 years after that moment, it felt like my heart had stopped beating. I was completely lost. If it were not for my faith and those 2 little boys, I would not be standing here today. That was my rock bottom. Everything I had ever learned from my father came back to me in that season of pain. Because the wisdom of a 3rd grade dropout became the only thing that kept me alive. I remember standing beside my father at her casket. I had never seen him cry before, but that day he did. She was not just my wife to him. She was his daughter, as I stood behind him preparing to say goodbye one last time. He turned to me with tears in his eyes and said 3 words that changed my life forever. He said, "Son, just stand." He looked straight at me and said again, "You keep standing. No matter how rough the sea gets, you keep standing. And I am not only talking about water. You stand through every storm that life throws at you. You never give up." That was the final lesson my father ever gave me, and it became the foundation for everything I believe today. Later, I remembered Trina's final words to me. She looked at me gently and said, "It no longer matters to me how long I live. What matters to me most is how I live." Those words became my guide because they carried the meaning of everything we had gone through. So now I ask the same question that my father asked me every single day of my life. How are you living? He would always say, ask yourself that question every day. How are you living? And when you answer it, remember what a simple cook once taught. Show up early. Be kind. Carry a servant's towel that is bigger than your ego. Do everything with care and integrity. He used to tell me that it is never wrong to do the right thing, that how you do anything is how you do everything. Live in a way that honors the people who came before you, those who believed in you, those who invested in you. Look for wisdom in the most unlikely places. Learn from it every day. And when the night comes, ask yourself one last question before you sleep. How am I living? Because that is what truly defines who we are, not what we own, not what we achieve, but how we live each day we are given. So when the storms come, when the nights grow long, and when you feel like giving up, remember the words of a 3rd grade dropout who never stopped learning. Stand. Tall, stand firm, keep standing. Do not let pain make you bitter. Let it make you wiser. Do not let failure define you. Let it shape your strength. Excellence is not something you do once, it is something you live every single day. Be early. Be kind, serve more than you are served, and never forget that pride will only weigh you down. Carry your towel proudly. Do the small things with great love, and when no one is watching, do it right anyway, because how you do anything is how you do everything. So ask yourself, how am I living? Live with purpose, live with compassion, live with humility and courage. Honor those who came before you and become the reason Someone else believes they can rise again in the end. Success is not about the money or the praise. It is about the impact you leave behind, the love you give, the lives you lift. So live fully, stand strong, and keep standing.